Okay, for this week, we're going to discuss the properties of integers. At the end of this video lesson, the learner will illustrate the different properties of operations on the set of integers. Before we proceed to the properties, let's perform the indicated operations. Number 1, 3 plus negative 3. Since we have different signs, we need to subtract their absolute values. 3 minus 3, that is 0. And we know that 0 is neither positive nor negative. Wala siyang sign. Number 2, 10 plus 4, that is 14. Number 3, negative 7 plus 0. Since wala naman tayong inad, the answer will remain negative 7. Number 4, 12 times 1, the answer is 12. Number 5, negative 8 times 0, any number multiplied to 0 is 0. Number 6, negative 2 divided by negative 2. Since dinivide natin to sa number itself, the answer is 1. Number 7, 3 times negative 4. We multiply different or opposite signs. The answer here is negative. So this will be negative 12. Number 8, 4 times 1/4. Since we have a whole number multiplied to a fraction, we can have 4 times 1, 4, divided by 4, 1. Number 9, 11 plus negative 11. Again, we have opposite signs. Subtract their absolute values. 11 minus 11, 0. And number 10, negative 20 times 1, different signs, and this will be negative 20. So as you notice here, karamihan ng operations na given ay more on addition and multiplication because the properties that we are about to discuss are mostly applicable to those two operations. So ano nga ba itong properties of integers? When we say property in mathematics, this is a rule that is always true. Whatever value of the real numbers or integers, kapag ginamitan ng property na to, the answer will remain true. So let's focus first on the properties involving addition. The first one is the closure property. When we say closure property under addition and subtraction, it states that the sum or difference of any two integers is also an integer. Ibig sabihin, if we have a plus b na integer, the answer will become c, which must also be an integer. So let's have more concrete examples. 3 plus 5 is 8. 3 and 5 are integers and their answer is also an integer. Another one, negative 5 plus negative 2. Since they have common signs, add their absolute values and copy the common sign. Again, negative 5 and negative 2 are negative integers and their answer is also an integer. Well, this one is also applicable to subtraction. 8 minus 5, that is 3, or 8 minus negative 5. So here in subtraction, we follow the keep the minuend, change the operation, and change the sign of the subtrahend. So this will be positive 5. So 8 plus 5, that is 13. Again, when we say closure property, even if you add or you subtract integers, the answer will remain to be an integer. The second property is what we call the associative property. Here, it states that if three integers are added, it makes no difference whether which two are added first. Ibig sabihin, if we have three integers, just like a, b, and c, whether i-add mo muna yung a plus b bago yung c, or i-add mo muna yung b plus c bago yung a, the answer will remain the same. So let's have concrete example here. 4 plus 5 plus 3. So on this side, ang igrupo naman natin is yung 5 and 3. If we have some parentheses in an equation, lagi nating unahin yung nasa loob nun. Here, 4 plus 5 is 9, while on the other side, 5 plus 3, 8. Now 9 plus 3 is 12 and 4 plus 8 is also 12. We have shown that whether we group muna yung two numbers before we add it to the third number, the answer will remain the same. Another example, 5 plus the quantity negative 3 plus negative 7. Pwede rin naman nating igrupo muna yung 5 plus negative 3 before natin i-add sa negative 7. So here, 5 plus negative 3 plus negative 7, since they have the same sign, add their absolute values, 10, and copy their common sign. While on the other side, 5 plus negative 3, kapag different signs, subtract. That will be 5 minus 3, 2, and copy the sign of the higher absolute value. So this one is positive. Plus negative 7. So dito sa left side, 5 plus negative 10, opposite signs ulit, subtract 10 minus 5, that's 5, and copy the sign of the higher absolute value. So that's negative. While here, 2 plus negative 7, opposite signs ulit, subtract 7 minus 2, 5, and copy the sign of the higher absolute value, which is negative. So we have the same answers. So yun ang ibig sabihin ng associative property. Or yung iba, they pronounce it as associative property. Kahit igrupo mo yung numbers differently, the answer will remain the same. However, note here that subtraction is not associative in nature. Ibig sabihin, kapag may 3 numbers na tayo dito and merong operation na subtraction, hindi pwede or hindi applicable ang associative property. Because remember, in subtraction, we follow the rule keep, change, change. So, kailangan nating i-change yung subtrahend. So, pag nabago yun dahil binago mo yung grupo, mababago din yung sagot. That is why associative property is not applicable to subtraction. The third one is commutative property or commutative property. Here, two integers can be added in any order. Whether it is a plus b or b plus a, the answer will remain the same. So, ang kaibahan naman dito, kung yung associative ay more on grouping, dito naman is about, for example, if we have 3 plus 7, or 7 plus 3, they are both equal to 10. Kahit pagpalitin mo pa sila ng pwesto, they will have the same answer. Another one, we can have negative 2 plus 5, or we can have 5 plus negative 2. Since they have opposite signs, subtract their absolute values and copy the sign of the higher absolute value. So they will still be both positive 3. So, dito rin, hindi rin pwede ang subtraction because hindi nga pwedeng magpalit yung minuend and subtrahend. Fourth one is identity property. Any integer added to the identity element 0 will remain unchanged. Ibig sabihin, any number added to 0 will reflect its identity or the number itself. That is why we call 0 as the identity element of addition, because whatever number na i-add mo sa 0 will have the same value of that number. For example, 4 plus 0, 4, or 0 plus 8 will still remain 8. Kahit negative pa yan, pag in-add mo sa 0, the answer will still be negative. Or 0 plus negative 10, the answer will still remain negative 10. So, kahit anong number na i-add natin sa 0 will remain the value or the identity of that number itself. The fifth one is what we call inverse property. The sum of an integer and its additive inverse or opposite is the identity element. So, ibig sabihin, kapag meron tayong number at inad mo ito sa kanyang opposite, we call it additive inverse. The answer will be 0. And kakadiscuss lang natin that 0 is an identity element. So, for example, we have 5 plus its additive inverse or its opposite, which is negative 5. So, the answer is 0. Or we can have negative 7 plus its opposite, positive 7. The answer is 0. Ibig sabihin, kapag inad natin yung number sa kanyang inverse or kabaliktaran or opposite, the answer is 0. That's the inverse property. And the last one is the distributive property. Kapag may distributive property, we are given three numbers wherein meron tayong multiplication, and that multiplication will be distributed over addition or subtraction. So in this symbol, notice that A is being multiplied to the quantity B plus C, or here, A is being multiplied to the quantity B minus C. Kaya ito tinawag na distributive property. Yung A ay imumultiply natin at i-distribute sa number na nasa loob ng parenthesis. So, A times B plus A times C. So, the operation will remain the same. Ganon din dito, A times B minus A times C. So let's have some concrete examples. So let's have 4 times 5 plus 2. Here, let's distribute 4. So 4 times 5 plus 4 times 2. So 4 times 5, that is 20, plus 8 is 28. So, kahit hindi mo yan i-distribute, the answer will remain the same. Because, as I said, unahin natin yung nasa parentheses. 5 plus 2 is 7. And when you multiply that to 4, 4 times 7 is also equal to 28. So that's how distributive property works. We also have distributive property over subtraction. Suppose we have 5 times 3 minus 2. So, i-distribute natin 5 times 3 minus 5 times 2. 5 times 3 is 15 minus 5 times 2, that's 10. 15 minus 10 is 5. That is also equal sa 3 minus 2, which is 1, times 5, that is 5. So, that's distributive property. So, let's have more examples by matching the following equation to its property. Number 1, 2 plus 0 equals 2. Since we added a number to 0 and it reveals its value or the number itself, this one is identity property. Number 2, we have 5 times the quantity 2 plus 3, and we have seen that 5 is being distributed to 2 and to 3, maintaining the operation addition, that is distributive property over addition. Number 3, 9 plus negative 9 equals 0. We have a number added to its opposite or additive inverse, and the answer is 0. So that is inverse property. Number 4, 3 plus the quantity 2 plus 5 is equal to the quantity 3 plus 2 plus 5. Dito, grino po muna yung 2 plus 5 bago i-add sa 3, pero sa kabila naman, iba yung groupings before i-add sa 5. Since we're dealing with the groupings, that is associative property. Number 5, negative 5 plus negative 3 plus 2, that is equal to 2 plus negative 5 plus negative 3. Kung mapapansin nyo dito, pareho pa rin namang nakagroup si negative 5 at si negative 3. Pero ang nabago is yung order ng mga numbers. Since the order changed, but it will have the same result, this one is commutative property. Next one, we have negative 9 plus negative 10, and the answer is negative 19, which is also an integer. This one is closure property because the answer remain to be an integer. While number 7 times the quantity 5 minus 2. So automatically, pag nakakita tayo ng multiplication and then imumultiply siya dun sa parentheses na may operation sa loob, that is distributive property. And since it involves subtraction, this is distributive property over subtraction. So these are the properties of addition. Now let's proceed to the properties of integers involving multiplication. Actually, we have almost the same set of properties. But of course, ang difference lang nito is ang operation na makikita natin ay more on multiplication. So ganun din, when we say closure property, when we multiply two integers, the answer will remain to be an integer. So here, A times B, that is equal to C. We can have 2 times 3, that is equal to 6. 2 and 3 are integers. The answer is an integer. We can have negative 3 times negative 5, that is positive 15 because they have the same sign, while opposite sign will be negative. So when we multiply two integers, the answer will still remain as an integer. Notice that we have a note here that division of integers doesn't follow the closure property. Kapag ginamit natin to sa division, hindi applicable ang closure property because we can have 24 over 5 and 24 divided by 5 will have a decimal number. So this one is 4.8. Ang answer natin dito ay naging decimal. At ang decimal ay hindi integer. Kaya naman, hindi applicable ang division sa closure property. The second one, meron din tayong associative property. So pag sinabing associative property, yung groupings or kung ano man yung two numbers na i-multiply mo together, before you multiply it to the third one, the answer will still remain the same. So here we can have 4 times 2 times 3. Kahit unahin muna natin yung 4 times 2 or 2 times 3, they will still have the same answer, which is 24. So we can have another example, 3 times negative 5 times negative 2. We can have 3 times the quantity negative 5 times negative 2. So laging unahin yung nasa loob ng parenthesis. 3 times negative 5, opposite signs, the answer is negative. On the other hand, negative 5 times negative 2, they have the same sign, the answer is positive. Let's finish this. Negative 15 times negative 2, the same sign, the answer is positive. 3 times 10, the answer is positive. So here, we have both sides equal to 30. So again, whether we change the groupings of the factors, the answer or the product will remain the same. Next, the third property is commutative property. So remember, pag sinabing commutative, the order of the factors will not change its product. So A times B, or kahit B times A pa yan, they will have the same answer. 7 times 2 is equal to 2 times 7 because they are both equal to 14. Or we can have negative 7 times 3. Both of them will have negative 21 as the answer. That is commutative property. So notice that division is not commutative for integers. So hindi rin pwede ito sa division. Because sa division, iba ang numerator over denominator or iba yung dividend at divisor. Hindi natin ito pwedeng pagbaliktarin. Next is identity property. Ano kaya itong number na ito na this time, kapag multiply natin, will have the same number. So here, in multiplication, any number multiplied to the identity element 1 will remain unchanged. So kanina sa addition, ang identity element natin ay 0 because any number added to 0 is the number itself. While sa multiplication, ang identity element natin is 1. Because any number multiplied to 1 is the number itself. So we can have 8 times 1. The answer is the number itself, 8. We can have negative 5 times 1. The answer will still remain as negative 5. Or we can have 1 times negative 3. The answer will still be negative 3. So wag pagpapalitin, sa addition, 0 is the identity element, while in multiplication, this is 1. Number 5, the inverse property. So kung sa addition, ang inverse nito is yung opposite sign, sa multiplication, the product of an integer and its multiplicative inverse or reciprocal is the identity element. Ibig sabihin, yung inverse sa multiplication is yung reciprocal niya. Ang reciprocal ng A is 1 over A. So when you multiply the number to its reciprocal, the answer is the identity element, which is 1, provided na hindi 0 ang denominator. Kasi kung 0 yan, the answer will be 0. So let's have an example. 5 multiply to its inverse, which is 1 over 5, or yan yung reciprocal niya. And remember, when we multiply 5 times 1, 5 over 5, that is equal to 1. Pwede rin naman, kahit negative pa ito, negative 3 times its reciprocal, which is negative 1/3, that will be 3 over 3. Negative times negative is positive. So it will still be 1. So that is inverse property. The sixth one is the zero property. So dito, when we say zero property, we know that any number multiplied to 0 is 0. Whether positive pa yan or negative, basta i-multiply sa 0, the answer is 0. So whether we can have 8 times 0, that's 0, or negative 8 times 0, the answer is 0. So let's try these examples. Let's match again the following equation to its property. So the first one, 2 times 0 is 0. Dahil minultiply natin sa 0, any number multiplied to 0 is 0, that's 0 property. Number 2, 8 times 1 over 8. 8 minultiply sa kanyang inverse or reciprocal, kaya ang sagot ay 1. And that is what we call the inverse property. Number 3, 2 times the quantity negative 5 times negative 3, that is equal, while sa kabilang side, na kung saan ang nakagrupo naman ay 2 times negative 5 bago i-multiply sa negative 3. So here, nabago yung groupings ng factors, and since we're talking about the groupings, that is associative property. Number 4, we have negative 9 times negative 10. The answer is positive 90. Here, we multiplied two negative integers and the answer is still integer. So that is closure property. And number 5, 7 times the quantity 5 times 2, and then yung 5 times 2 minultiply naman sa 7. So parehas pa rin yung groupings, pero pinagpalit natin yung order nila. Since we changed the order but the answer is still the same, this one is commutative property. So, meron tayong kulang na identity property. But anyway, pag sinabi nating identity, any number, let's say for example, 100, multiply to 1. So that the answer will be the number itself. So that's for identity property. Okay, so let's summarize the lesson. We have discussed the properties of integers, particularly in addition and multiplication. The first one is the closure property, which means if we add two integers, okay, or if we multiply two integers, their answers will still be an integer. Kapag sinabi naman nating associative property, when we add integers, whether 2 at a time muna, or ibahin pa natin, the answer will still remain the same. Ganon din sa multiplication, whether change the groupings of the factors, the answer will still remain the same. while commutative is more on the order. So we can have 3 plus 5 plus 2, that is equal to 2 plus 5 plus 3. Kahit pagpalitin pa natin yung position nila. Ganun din sa multiplication, 2 times 3 times 4, or 4 times 3 times 2 pa man yan, they will have the same answer. The next one is the identity. The identity element for addition is 0 because any number added to 0 is the number itself, while in multiplication, the identity element is 1 because any number multiplied to 1 is the number itself. Next is the inverse. When we say inverse, we add it to its opposite for addition. The opposite of 4 is negative 4, and it will have the identity element 0. While in multiplication, if we have a number multiplied to its reciprocal, that will be equal to identity element, which is 1. And we have distributive property, wherein we distribute the multiplication operation over addition, or we can have over subtraction. Here we distribute the operation of multiplication. And the last one is zero property, which is only applicable for multiplication because any number multiplied to 0 is always 0. I hope this helps you to understand more the properties of integers. Thank you.